At 4:11 p.m. And what do you want to call this start as what?
Subcommittee.
Subcommittee.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to start as a subcommittee until we have a quorum, and then we'll get to the minutes and get on to the agenda. And pending a quorum, I'll just hand it over to the treasurer. We do have a hefty schedule today with our monthly financial report, our annual appropriations resolution, a discussion, or an interactive review of the capital budget, continuing to look at different ways we can examine that budget. And then there's going to be a discussion about the board having a discussion on board development. That will be just informing this committee that there will be discussion on that by the board itself. And then we're going to get to adding representatives from the two labor unions and our two associations as ex officios to this committee moving forward into the new year. And then finally, budget timelines. So what do all these budgets look like? We have, personnel that we're looking to get to, and a non-personnel budget, various capital budgets. When's the best time for this committee and this board to go through, what we learned from this year, which are reductions, but hopefully normal years where we're not having reductions, we're going through a cadence. It's almost like, we went backwards, but that taught us a lot about how we need to, continue this moving forward. So a discussion on that, what that looks like, looking at the next calendar year, starting August 1st, or July 1st, sorry about that. But we'll be looking at that probably sooner or later. All right, so with that, I will then hand it over to the treasurer to begin the monthly financial report.
Okay, this is thank you, sorry, walked all over you. This is for the month of May, the last month in the fiscal year. Once again, revenues are above plan, expenditures on a year-to-date basis are running below plan. For the month, revenues came in about 11 million over plan, and that brought that year-to-date variance to just over 30 million above plan, about plus 3.5%. Expenditures, on the other hand, ran about 7.4 million under plan. Again, year-to-date expenditures now are at 26.4 million under plan, about 3% under plan, so about 3.5 favorable on variances on revenue, and 3.3 favorable or under plan on total expenditures.
So really quick, I know we talked about this, especially in our budget conversations. We were talking about budget reductions and sort of tightening up your sort of conservative forecasting and expecting a certain amount that we'll be able to sort of bank on moving into the future. Looking as we're getting close to this fiscal year, year-to-date expenditures 26.4 million under plan seems like a little bit more than the 10 to 15 range that you were originally talking about. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What do you attribute that to? I'm sure you'll get into that, but
yeah, let's go through it line by line, and we'll see where adjustments can be made.
Mm-hmm.
Even on the revenue side, there may be some areas that we can, I guess, lessen the conservatism, if you will. And as always, we're fearful on the expenditure side about what really is the behavior that's going on, and
Sure.
we don't want to overreact and penalize folks for what you might call underspending, because we don't want to get into that use it or lose it mentality.
Absolutely.
Kind of a situation. That's not how we budget, but you just have to be careful of that. So, on the revenue side, property taxes, there was no activity this year, so we will finish 19 million over plan. That variance, remember we talked about, was there a change in the annual or the calendar year payment behavior of taxpayers because of the change in federal tax law, such that the first half taxes would be larger than typically, the relationship between first half and second half might be distorted by that a bit, because a lot of people paid in December of last calendar year, which shows up in January, February of this calendar year for my collections. So it becomes a calendar year 18, first half, second half thing. That can account for some of it, in addition to our typical conservative. I'm trying to remember what we did. I think we did factor a lot of that into our May forecast that we've already adopted. So that, remember, we had a great improvement in the forecast out in 2022, I think it was. And part of that was factoring this kind of variance in as well. State aid, 758,000 over plan. We are within 1.9 million of the plan. We're actually higher than what we anticipated for the year, but it's 0.6%, so it's very, very close. We look at the numbers from the state. We have in the plan about 341.5 million. They're showing approximately 340, so we'll probably end up right here at about 1.5 million under plan. So that's pretty much on target, and that kind of less than 1% variance is really more than I can ask for, so that's pretty good. When we look into the other revenue categories, restricted federal grants, we did receive a little bit this month, a typical month for these payments. This has to do with the federal reimbursement for some bond interest. We'll be within $18,000 on $500,000. But that's because we kind of already know what those payments are. That's just a rounding error when we do our plan. Property tax allocation, which includes not only homestead and rollback, but it also includes the reimbursement we get for personal property taxes. And I added on the last last page, I think it is, a little cash flow analysis when you get around to looking at it. Not the last page here, it's the last page of the notes, but about third from the last page, kind of a cash flow analysis of what's going on in that line. And what we did is we got Medicaid reimbursement beforehand, but we didn't get the personal property tax reimbursement when we thought. So all in all, by the time we get to June, this should even itself out to where we're within about $66,000. And the part that will be confusing is because both of these are right in the $3 million range. You'll see the same kind of variance occurring. You really have to dig into it to say, okay, well that variance was due to the Medicaid coming in sooner than we thought, and this variance is due to the personal property tax reimbursement coming in a month later than we thought. So, but all in all, by the end of June, on 40 million, we're within 66,000, which is excellent. We don't know this number exactly, except for the personal property tax part, the reimbursement part, but the rollback and homestead we're estimating, so we're real close on that. All other revenues, the big thing here is that we're anticipating about $6 million in June. I believe the only thing we're getting in that's large is the win-win payment, which is about $3.1 million. So we should be under plan for the month, but still into the year almost 5.5 over plan, and that's, as I note in the analysis here, it's the property tax exemption payments. You know, we make property tax settlements on cases before the Board of Tax Appeals and Board of Revision. We get those payments. I don't have a long list of them. You know, we'll look and see. It's 2.2 million more than what I estimated. Should we adjust this line up a bit and pick up a couple million in the forecast? That's something that we'll consider. I did not specifically do that in the May, but we can look at that for the October.
Are the settlements mostly what's driving it, or is it outside of is that outside some of the win-win payments? And
well, that has nothing to do with win-win. Yeah. These are all when either we file a case to have values increased, or we file a counter, I guess it's a counter complaint, is that what you would call it? When someone asks for their value to be reduced, and we go to either Board of Revision or ultimately the Board of Tax Appeals, and they decide to reach a settlement that for a certain period of time they'll make payments in lieu of taxes if we agree to a certain value going forward. And it's just a settlement is what it ends up being. The other part is 3.3 million in investments over and above what we had estimated. The interesting thing about investment income is, you know, we were building a balance here, so we had a little bit more to invest. Interest rates slightly creeped up, so don't get too excited and say, well, let's add in 3.3 million more every year, because you never know what's going to happen down the road with balances and interest rates. So I will look at that line too and say, well, how much of that variance do we want to have, and should we adjust it as well? But those are both in the good direction. But again, it's kind of hard. You get a little antsy about assuming that to happen year over year.
From my, I'm not sure if we saw it here. Maybe Larry presented it to us, but property settlements, property tax settlements for the last couple of years has been climbing. I think. No.
I don't know.
I don't know that I've ever seen an analysis.
Yeah.
Just that.
Exactly. I don't think I've seen anything.
I don't know that we've done anything year over year year by year, we see it. Here's what we've done in the cases, and generally it's that return on investment analysis that the legal firm does. You've invested this in legal fees and expenses, and this is what we either protected from coming off the duplicate or added to the duplicate, and we look at it that way. But year to year to year to year, that analysis hasn't been done. But we do record them in one revenue line, so we can look at that dollar amount, whether or not we have the detail, what cases there are, how many cases there are, dollars per case, that's not the issue. It's just overall, does that represent a trend? Can we count on that continuing?
And if we look year to year, it's just going to probably have track reappraisals and track updates.
Yeah,
So,
okay. So that's the all other revenue line. Other financing sources, there's minimal activity this year, a whopping $1,000 over plan, and so we're at about $793,000 over plan on 14 million. And I just noticed in the notes I didn't update one of the graphs. Not to this time. The year-to-date graph is last month's, not this month's, but it's essentially the same over plan number. Moving to expenditures. Personnel ran under plan, just about 1.7% at $799,000 under plan. The year-to-date variance then increased to 9.4 million under plan, or about 1.8% under plan. So that to me is an acceptable variance under plan. So as this number grows over time, you can see that acceptable variance may grow over time, and therefore we'll have, that what we factor in as a favorable. This will begin to contribute, $10 million every year, unless we can really ratchet our forecast down. So, and I just remind everybody that on a full year plan of about 591 million, that type of a variance is about 10.8 million. And I would expect to be in that 10 million, give or take, range at the end of the year. Again, this month, we don't change our plans for the annual appropriation resolution. In fact, we left the personnel side of it alone because we think we'll be within that. We do have a 3-pay month, but we should be okay. And that final appropriation for 18 is what you'll approve June 30th? June 29th. June 29th is when that meeting to approve that final appropriation. So we would have to run into a problem. We can fix the appropriation, but we don't anticipate that at this time. Purchase services, again, 1.7 million under plan, fairly significantly under plan. Hi, 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to?
Continue this one.
Okay, we'll finish this. Okay.
We're just now on purchase services on expenditures.
Okay, thank you.
On the
I'll make sure
report.
this
Yeah,
is
no problem.
Again, that year-to-date variance is now 4.2 million under plan. Assuming we come in on plan for June, hasn't been typical, but that will be at least 4.2 million under plan. I don't anticipate that changing to an unfavorable situation. Certainly will be significantly under plan there. On charter school payments and other STEM scholarship, we again came in under plan. We already knew that we budgeted 191 million, but the state numbers tell me it's going to be about 185 million, so that's going to run 6 million under plan. Now, as for that appropriation, we've got another tuition line within purchase services that's running over for outside tuition costs, so we will be moving that appropriation over there, and that will change OPUs.
Yes, and we did that last month.
Yeah, so
We approved it this month,
Okay.
sorry.
So that's been moved over there to handle that, so we didn't have to increase the appropriation anywhere to take care of that. We are talking about this line in terms of budgeting purposes, since it has come in, below. We want to reevaluate that because we built the budgets based upon numbers of students and tuition, those per pupil costs that would generate the 191. Well, if we're coming in at 185, we should go back and revisit that as we roll into the October forecast to pick some of that up. Supplies and materials, again, under budget this month, about $149,000. Year-to-date at 2.7 million under plan. We continue to look at the categories that repeats this month with the 5 categories of the highest under plan variance for general supplies, software, materials, supplemental textbooks, operation of materials for operation and maintenance plan, and other supplies and materials. You can see that all spelled out there. When we look at the budgetary data for this, it appears that appropriation has been moving between objects, specifically out of purchase services, and supplies and material and other, but into capital outlay. But you'll hear later, the capital outlay has not yet been encumbered. It's still got a sizable unencumbered balance. They moved it there, and we're not real sure why the reallocation went that direction, and then it didn't seem like anybody encumbered it. So interesting behavior there. However, on supplies and materials, we're 90% expended and encumbered when we're about 92% through the year, but we're still under. You're under plan because they moved the appropriation out, and the plan was based upon the appropriation. So. Capital outlay, that's another interesting line. We are running above plan. I mentioned before that was because of the carry forward from last year. We're about 1.1 million over plan. I would suspect that will be true.
Real quick, Stan, I'm still just a little fuzzy on how everything transfers and how that all works. Like, briefly go over that again, like what we don't understand.
As far as their
page 8.
budgetary authority within the appropriation resolution?
Yeah.
Well, they have authority to move it within objects within their operational unit. So as they get near the end of the year, they go, well, let's buy this, or let's spend money over here at the end of the year. So they'll begin to reallocate. What we're trying to look at is a trend, and so it appears that there has been a trend to consolidate available balances from purchase services, supplies, materials, and this other category to a lesser degree into capital outlay. And then they can spend or encumber out of capital outlay line. If it crosses operational units, they have to come to the board for approval.
But we also don't change what the projected plan is. So even after they move money, we don't go back and change what the monthly plan is. So that explains some of those monthly variances that we see, but we're looking into trying to dig deeper into why.
Yeah,
why the
if we
transfer,
appropriate things in certain areas,
Right.
I mean, why aren't they just,
And
what's
there-
going
and there-
on with the pot of money that they should be using?
And there could be a lot of reasons for that. Some of the items could be maybe the estimate was too high, so maybe we just came in under. Maybe it was a bid item that we received favorable variances through that process. The other piece is maybe there was a change in priorities within that operating unit that made us move money from one area to another. Some we had, for example, as Mike and I looked into it, was a reading program that was originally budgeted, and this one goes backwards, but it was originally budgeted as a text material, hard, so it showed up as a supply. But we actually implemented it through an online piece, so that was then a purchased service. So same thing, but it was just a different way that it was being delivered. So that was some of the reasons. We also want to make sure that what we don't do is create that sense of panic, that we don't want everybody going out and saying, okay, we're looking at this and then spend everything that's there, so then we run the risk of not having those favorable variances at the end of the year. But we want to make sure that we're still meeting the intended goals and outcomes of those budget operating units at the beginning of the year, because we want to make sure that they're doing everything that they set out and planned for.
Now, would you, in your team, be able to dig into all these various transfers and understand why it's going on? Because this is an area that we've just had, it's always been an area that's a little uncertainty.
Those
Seems to
supplies,
be-
the ones that are highlighted in yellow, continue to be,
Mhm.
and all the feedback that we received is that they were still planning to do that. I will tell you, with the end of May data, we have not been able to really dig into that with the budget managers, because at the end of school year, it's just, there isn't an end of the month that's worse than what we're dealing with right now, just trying to get everything wrapped up at the end of school year. So this is definitely a summer project that we're looking into to
Yeah.
figure that out. And we're looking at some ways to improve our internal processes a little bit because of how budgets get entered, looking at even our quarterly monitoring, how we're doing that, and maybe do that differently to try to dig in and flush some of this stuff out earlier on.
So this is maybe from a variety of different departments, all doing the same kind of behavior. And we probably already know that. It's not just some folks doing it, but you've not yet really gotten in far enough to see patterns.
We've looked, the pieces that were highlighted, those yellow pieces in the supplies, we knew who those were. And then typically were 3 different areas that we were looking at, so we continue to work through those with them. I know one of them has since left the district, so makes a little bit of fleet services. For some of the issues that we're having with fuel and some items like that, so
Okay.
that makes it a little difficult.
One of the things that you do have in the financial report, the green bar, there is a column, 5 from the right, entitled FY18 revised budget. It's the appropriation resolution for expenditures only. So you can see what that, at this level, at the aggregate object level, what the appropriation resolution shows us in terms of revised budget. And then you compare it to what the October 17 plan was, and then what I based our monthly plan on. I just did that to show surrounding issues there. So, for instance, you can see on supplies and materials, the appropriation sits at about $17.6 million, but the plan and the forecast at 20.1. So you can automatically go, okay, well, if it's not appropriated, they're not going to spend it. So you're going to come in under plan on that. But this is a very high-level, gross look at it, just to kind of give you some trigger points. I mean, and you can see in capital outlay, 3.1 is in the revised budget, and we put in the plan of 1.9 million. So clearly, we're going to be potentially $2 million over on that. Okay, so that's just one thing that we do monthly to get it highlighted or keep track of it a little bit.
As long as we keep an eye on sort of what's going on with this behavior.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the things we're talking about too is maybe the monthly plan ought to be, you've got several documents going on. You've got the forecast document, you've got the appropriation resolution, and then you have a monthly spending plan. And they don't all have to be equal, because you have different sets of assumptions. So when we look at the appropriation resolution, maybe the monthly plan should be set at a percentage of that to be more realistic. Then you might make the leap that, well, based on that, and they put budgets together, should we include in the forecast a percentage of that rather than 100%? That begins to eat away at your conservative approach. You begin to lower your estimate for expenditures and increase your estimate for revenue in the forecast. That's less conservative than what we have. And while that may make sense right now, and you might not be uncomfortable with it, you'll be real uncomfortable with it when it flips and revenue comes in under and expenditures come over the monthly spending plan. You might be within the appropriation, but the minute they spend 98% instead of the plan to 92%, and the forecast was based upon 92,
Well, yeah,
that
just
flips,
like-
then you'll go,
Trying
uh-oh.
to understand what's going on, you know, on the ground level, what causes the behavior, what's normal behavior, what are the processes, you know, how is this, you know, just those sort of things. I mean,
And we try to get a grip
Just-
on what's an acceptable variance.
we don't want to get into micro at all, but I'd rather us understand it if we're constantly having, you know, this is constantly something that we're talking about, board table has even brought it up. So that's all. It just seems to be one of those areas that's a little bit more gray than a lot of other areas.
And we've even taken that back with the last 5 years to look at this, to see if this is the same trend that we had 5 years ago, to try to get to that, do we lower the estimate in the 5-year forecast piece? Because those are things that we want to have a much deeper conversation with
Dr.
senior
Stanford
leadership
had
about.
something you wanted to
No, I
say.
think Stan said what I was thinking, and that is, you know, do we know what is an acceptable level of variance that we're willing to accept or not accept? Because I look at the 5-year forecast as being that sort of a macro document, that whatever limitations you place on that will have an impact on the annual budget in the day-to-day work. And so if there isn't that flexibility to have some variance there, then as the treasurer has stated, you set yourself up then
Sure.
for possible
Sometimes,
issues,
yeah.
later on. And so having a little bit of variance can be a good thing sometimes, so.
And that's why I run that, what I call my hurricane map, just to give you an idea that, 2% this way, 2% that way creates a much better picture. Is that more plausible? Maybe.
Now, is some of this, I guess the result of different departments having different strategies about how they use their budgets, and even based on myths about how they may do things and think that they're better off in their department. And does looking at it that way help? I mean, is that part of what you're looking for, maybe, is a better question.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part of that summer. I think what I'd like to get into is even deeper training than what we've done before. Because each year, we're now in our 4th year with our new budget process, and each year's been something new. And we're always looking to take it to kind of the next level and get deeper, richer conversations about that. And a lot of times when we get to our level, we're not involved in the department discussion around building that budget.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to talk deeper about that and try to, get the different offices talking to one another to make sure that we're all doing the same thing and trying to make it the best that we can, but still aligned to the goals of the district. And that's the ultimate piece. But we want to make sure that we're doing what we intended to do, because we don't want these variances occurring, risking not getting those done.
So that's capital outlay. Debt service, there's no activity. And there'll be a little bit of activity in June for an interest payment, but we should be on plan there. Other objects, very little activity. But the variance did flip from positive to negative, if you will, because of a 1 million variance on the monthly basis. We should be flat now at about 499,000 favorable on, I think it's 10 million in that line. Other financing uses, this is all going to be driven by any advances out that we need during the month of June, and we don't know those till we get around to finalizing the books, and that's going to happen here in the next couple of weeks before your 29th meeting, and we'll see what that comes out to be. We'd have to, as you can see, this is pretty well under plan, about 3.4 million under plan, and that we'd have to pump in $10 million in advances to get up to the year-to-date number at this point. And usually the advances run 7 to 10 million, so this is one of those deals where we have to leave it up for the report, because if we need it, we need it. Okay. That closes out that monthly financial report. Is that next?
Didn't
You ready to call the roll? Okay, so I've got 440. Okay, so Mr. Peretti.
Here.
Mr. Brown. Here. Ms. Saranen.
Here.
Ms. Hudson, not present. Mr. Jordan. And Mr. Miller. Here. So you now have a quorum.
Let's take a look at the minutes. We have 2 months or 2 meetings with the minutes. We'll take a look at those. I have a motion to approve those minutes.
Move.
Is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign for opposed.
abstain for me. I didn't attend either one.
Okay. Did you catch that?
Well, yeah,
All right.
it passes with the majority of the
Thank you.
members present voting. Pardon me?
Did he abstain?
He abstained.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I heard the description.
I wasn't there.
All right, with that, monthly financial report done, we're gonna move on to item 4, fiscal year 2019 annual appropriation resolution, which reflects everything that's been going on this year and a few other items that have been changed, and maybe we can discuss that.
Yes.
Thank you.
There are 4 specific items that we're going to bring back to the committee for reconsideration to include in the general fund budget. Let's see,
So I can get there.
pulling up the presentation, so I'll tap dance a little bit longer. This year was a little bit different in terms of we spent the majority of the year going through a budget reduction process. So we kind of built our budget through a reduction approach. So what we have here was some items that we evaluated a little bit further and feel it's necessary to have those in the budget going forward. 3 of those items are academic services, as I look over it. Lisa Gillison and David Baker coming to the table to talk through those with us. And then there is one item in business and operations that Maurice will talk about. The appropriation resolution that you have before you, I guess just a little bit to talk through this with Jordan, because he wasn't here when we did this. There's legal statutory authority.
Is it in the agenda? As an
Yes,
attachment?
it's in there. To approve our appropriation resolution at the fund level. We do that for everything except the general fund. So when we moved to our new budgeting process, we appropriate personnel for the general fund, so salaries and benefits is one item. And then all of the non-personnel, which are the items that everybody came and presented those to, we approve those by operating unit. So each budget manager presents their non-personnel items, and then we approve those. 2 pages of this are those breakdowns. So every school and every department has their non-personnel numbers. So the board will approve that, and to our knowledge, there isn't another district in the state that does it like we do, much to the displeasure of some of our colleagues out there. But I think it's worked very well.
Did we get a hard copy of this?
That's what I handed
Oh.
to you, yeah. So, it's the Wisconsin one after that?
This one?
Yes, that one right there. It should be 3 pages. So this is what we'll present to the board. But what Stan has put up on here is the presentation, so we'll kind of turn over to Lisa and David to talk through the 3 items that we're recommending to put those back in. See if the committee has any questions for them about that, and go through the piece with Maurice, and then take it from there. That's okay.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon.
Thank the Lord.
Yes. The Department of Academic Services is requesting that 3 community partnerships be removed from the considered list of potential reductions from the general fund and be included as general fund appropriations for the 18-19 school year. Was there a question?
I'm just making sure I'm following along
Are
with
we
you
on the
on
right
the
slide?
PowerPoint.
She's talking in general.
Yes.
Okay.
Senior leadership has had numerous discussions about these 3 partnerships that impact general fund and have determined that the lack of these programs will negatively impact students as without them. The district does not have the capacity to offer the same or similar services to support students' growth and achievement. First, we are requesting that $300,000 be added back into the school leadership development budget, and that's OPU 934, to support the partnership with Communities in Schools, better known as CIS. Communities in Schools provide 7 of our highest need schools with vital direct services to students. Those schools are Columbus Afrocentric Early College, Egan Elementary, both Mifflin Middle and Mifflin High Schools, Columbus Global Academy, South 7 and 12, and Linda McKinley STEM Academy. Community in Schools provides each of these schools with a site coordinator who, in collaboration with the school leadership and teachers, utilizes a tiered approach to identify at-risk youth and provide them with direct supports to address the academic and non-academic barriers. For example, if there's no food in the home, if the students need clothing, and then there are social emotional supports that communities and schools provides for our kids. Second, we are requesting that $38,000 be added back into the teaching and learning budget, OPU 904, to support the Rotary Service Above Self initiatives across the district. These dollars assist in transporting students from their schools to the culminating event at the end of the school year, during which the work of the students is celebrated and recognized. These dollars also support the event itself. And when you think about communities and schools, that price tag is $38,000, but they give out over $57,000 in scholarships to our students as their community service projects, as they present those projects. And finally, we're requesting that $270,000 be added back into the early childhood education budget, and that's OPU 917, to support a continued partnership with the Ohio State University and the Schoenbaum Center at Wyland Park to support 20 pre-kindergarten seats. The Schoenbaum Center offers 20 seats to students from the Wyland Park neighborhoods to not only receive pre-K instruction, but also before and after school child care and shared professional development with the Wyland Park elementary staff. We're in the process right now of negotiating this MOU for the coming school year and anticipate the dollar amount being somewhere from 2/3 to 1/3 of this request, but we want to appropriate for the full amount just in case negotiations result in the continuing with the current contract. In conclusion, we are requesting an additional $608,000 be appropriated back into the identified OPUs so that we can continue to provide these direct services to students for the coming school year.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your presentation. And we had business operations too. Do you want to do that one and then we can wrap up with the questions? Or do you want to ask any questions we might have right now from academic services? What do you guys suggest?
Either way.
Anyway, let's go on with business operations and we'll just have you all up here for any questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
For business operation, I promise we'll be very short. For transportation, operating unit 947 in transportation, part of our reduction was reducing $300,000 due to the PALS program, we reduced our academic service. Because that program is going to be reinstated, we need to put $300,000 back into transportation to be able to transport those students to and from the PALS program. So we're requesting $300,000 be put back into transportation line item.
Well, you know what, really quick, I just really appreciate the time that you put into this, the processes that we went through in an unfortunate year and having to go through a lot of these reductions. I'm just very happy that with the structure that we have in place, that we've been able to have time to look back at these things that are very valuable and to make adjustments and re-examine things that may need to be re-looked at. So I appreciate your thoughtfulness in putting together these requests for the Finance Committee so they can be adopted into the appropriations resolution. Do we have any questions on that?
Are these programs among those where there might be alternative sources of funding that either we or our partners can pursue?
And what we have done, when we went through the initial budget reduction, and we sat down with several of our partners to see what we could do, if there was anything that they could do or bring to the table that would reduce the cost on the general fund side. And we're at a point now where if we don't add these back in, our students won't have the opportunities with the Columbus Rotary. We thought that there might be an opportunity. And then when you talk about return on investment, and we look to see that our kids are getting $57,000 in scholarships, and they're also participating in community service, and giving back to the community, and they're doing these service projects where they're awarded these scholarships, that we thought that one there was nothing that we could really do. We went to the Rotary and asked if they could try to raise some funds, and they said they would. At this point, they have not, and I just want to make sure that as we move forward into the new year, that we have services in place. Now, if they can, then we can reduce, but right now, as I said, we're in negotiation with Schoenbaum, and there may be a reduction, maybe 2/3 to 1/3, but right now, it has not been realized.
And I'm not suggesting that these aren't all really good, important things, and that we want to assure that they be done. I'm just wondering about alternative sources of funding for any of these. And I guess I'm thinking it's similar to the conversations we'd had about city year.
Yes.
And I know I can, and you know, to do it right on, to have that conversation about I know I can't right on the heels of the presentation might be a little challenging, but you know, it's still something that I think we need to look to as part of our overall approach, and both in terms of our fiscal responsibility to taxpayers, as well as trying to assure that those programs continue, but maybe look for some more creative ways.
And thank you for that, I appreciate that. And yes, we've been back and forth with I Know I Can, communities and schools, and we're doing the same with Schoenbaum. So we're not going to stop, we're going to continue to have those conversations.
Great, thank you.
So at this point, these are the changes to the appropriations resolution. And what we would need to do, if there aren't, isn't it, this is the end of discussion, is we would make a recommendation that these be incorporated and flown, or goes up to the board then for approval. So with that, there is another
I
discussion.
guess I do have a question.
Sure, please.
Do we have offsets to cover this, or, I mean, that's my question is, did we make more dramatic cuts and now we have a little wiggle room, or?
No, we did not.
Okay.
So when we're doing,
We did not to the first part of your question.
right, and I was, yeah, the
Okay.
follow-up was, when we talked about the favorable variances, we're actually projecting more favorable variances than we thought we would have.
Okay.
So there's some offset
Okay.
there. So the cash balance is there to be able to do this, because we'll obviously take this and then incorporate this into the 5-year forecast.
Yeah, well, these four requests add up to how much?
600.
600,000, and we have a favorable variance in the tens of millions. So that, and what's good about our conservative process is when you get to this point in the year when you don't have a whole lot of time to discuss and react and whatnot, you see something and you go, we need to add this back in. And so when the ability to add in 600,000, that could be ongoing for the life of the forecast, which is $3 million, to be able to say very quickly, that's okay, we're not gonna have to go back and change our forecast, we're not gonna have to go back and find an offset somewhere. We just get to a point where we can add them back in, I'd almost say as easily as we took them out, but that's not true because it was painstaking to take it out, but we have to be able to add things back in as times change. And so this conservative approach gives us that leeway without having to do something, you know, as you said, in an offset.
Sure.
And just to make sure, the 600,000 was the academic piece, but we
Right.
also have the 300,000.
300 for
So
the
in total, the
transportation.
900,000.
Okay, rounded to million, 5 million, we got 50, we're good.
Yeah.
Big numbers.
No, I mean, it's a good question. I
Your big
mean, like,
numbers,
we,
yeah.
Very good.
any other discussion, questions?
The other pieces you'll see is obviously this presentation, the document itself, and then we have the narratives, what's coming, because we've added these things here towards the end. There will be a big addition to the narratives, because each OP is broken out a little bit about what we're doing and historical information, projected information for 5 years, and then we'll take a statistical section, which will be a very large part, that you will see every department, every building, by 3-digit object, from previous 2 years of budgetary information as well as the projected, so that's all gonna be there. And typically, that's a 950-page document. It's a lot, so we have to pull that statistical piece in, but that will be there soon.
We don't need the drama of printing all that out.
It's a lot. We don't have enough copiers.
Throwing it on people's, right in front of them, the budget.
Scott wanted to get a two-wheeler.
We almost needed it.
Yeah, squeaky wheels. Alright,
The other thing I think we need to continue to look at as we work through some of this is, what's our core mission? What's required? We have to do those things well. What are the additional things that we choose to do because they're really good things to do? And, as we look at that, maybe there are some things that we're doing that we ought not be, or it's not as important. So I think we always have to think in those terms. There's a lot of really good things that we do that are not mandatory, and when we look at fiscal responsibility, that's part of it.
and we did do a lot of that as we went through this budget process. We did look at what was mandatory, what wasn't, what the value was of these things. And you're right, you do have to be good fiscal stewards, but there's a lot of things that, our kids also need to do, and that's why we have to make decisions as a board on what we also want to invest in. It's good to be a fiscal steward, but if you're not really achieving anything by being so fiscally conservative with academic success, what good really is it? So, but I think you're making, really good points in how we do need to continue to look, so.
Yeah, and that's partly a matter of what will the community
Sure.
support. Because, if the community supported, we'd love to do, a whole broad range of additional things. But we
Okay.
have to be careful.
That's great. So, any more discussion, questions or comments? All right, because we're getting close to 5 already. So I guess we will need a motion to adopt the appropriations resolution and recommend it to the board.
I move.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right. Thank you very much. Next, we will move on to item number 5. Taking just, continue to look at the work that we did at our last meeting with our capital budget, and we have Mr. Olden here. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we'll move on there. Mr. Olden, the floor is yours. Thanks,
It's
Dan.
probably mine.
Sure thing.
Yeah, Maurice and I were like, huh?
Grace is like, great. Sorry about that.
What we did since the last time, I put out a request for some more detailed information, and I got that, where, this is a work in, is it a work in process or a work in progress? Hopefully progress. And so all I wanted to show tonight in terms of interactive was what we can do with the data that we have. And so we have now here 4 sources of funding: the recently approved PI levy, our Operation Fix-It bond issue, the new sale of buildings, we call it the sale of buildings number 2, which is the most recent buildings that have been sold. And this will also be the fund that we use for all the sale of buildings going forward. And then the $500,000 maintenance fund that is relative to the OFC or OFFC or
Facilities Commission.
whatever they call themselves now.
Oh,
That's that fund. And what we can do here is, as we, and of course this is being jittery for me for some reason, this is not like mine. Let's see if this helps. There, that smooths it out. We can actually expand it to different categories of what they're doing: buildings and grounds, buses, carpentry, electrical. And we can see that funding. Let me turn this off for you. We can see that funding, and some have planned all the way out here to 2026. Others were just out here to 2022, but you can see those different projects. So in the PI levy, these are the general areas that we're spending the dollars in. And then if we pick one, say HVAC, we can break it down and see what the plan is by building as we go through over the years. And you can do that for every fund. Now you'll see that one of the things, again, we're working on this for, let me shrink this back down and go over to Operation Fix-It. You'll see that there's nothing here in the years because we have the data, but we haven't yet been able to take a file from one software program and mesh it with the file from another software program where we have the project planning, which shows you the years in which we're doing it, versus the other file that we have that says this is what we budgeted in the various trade areas, which is aligned with that chart that we used in the levy that had the colored dots
Yeah,
on
with
it.
different things we're gonna do.
So we've got that to give us the dollar amounts by building, by category, but we just haven't meshed it to fiscal year yet. So we'll continue to work on that, but it's a matter of sitting down and looking at the software and deciding how do we spit it out of this program so it meshes up, and how do we, because they, when they're working on this, the folks in facilities, I believe, they could correct me if I'm wrong, but they think of it in terms of facilities management, not in terms of accounting and reporting out. So they're worried about project timelines, how they put projects together, and yeah, they do have this budget over here in the different categories, but then they're really thinking of managing the projects. And when you think about budgeting, it's not necessarily timeline driven, it's in the aggregate. Okay, during the life of this bond issue, we're gonna spend on these things. And then over here in a different program, we're gonna do project management that doesn't necessarily have dollars tied to it. So we've gotta mesh those two together somehow. And what I don't wanna do is create yet a third system. And I also want to make sure that this is easily updatable. So I'm not so sure that what I've designed here and pulled together will survive the test of time. We may choose that we want to use do something else that makes it easy and workable for those that have the data and work with it, to add a little bit more to it, and then it'll spit out power. I don't know how that'll work, but so far so good. We've got this because we can take this and look at, say, lighting upgrades, and no, here are all the schools.
Yeah.
And it's broken down by school, so we can see that. So once we get the dates in there, then we can easily handle with that. What's really nice about this is once we get it in this format, you can see it other ways very easily. I don't know how many of you have worked with these spreadsheets or not, but if you want to look at it a different way, look at everything by school first, it's simple enough to pull it up that way. Now we've got everything by school. And then when you expand Alpine, you can see they're in the PI levy at Alpine for preventative maintenance, PM, preventative maintenance, okay?
So is this available, or we only have, this is available for the public, or is this?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we're not. I mean, if somebody wanted my spreadsheet, they could have it, but I'm not going to be subject to answering questions about it because it's like working documents. So you're getting to see live what we work with. And you've been in my office, and we throw it up on first of all, it's a landscape screen, so you get more up there. And we routinely sit down as a team and walk through it. And then they get to see how I look at it and how Scott looks at it from a budget standpoint. And then go, okay, well, we look at it this way, but maybe if we added a field here or trailer data of some sort, then that would best match up with what you're thinking. So it's a process. I said this at the last time we talked about this, and everybody's done a great job. I have to call out one person, and that's Dewan. He provided his information, and by golly, I don't know, he just, boom, he had it. And I used that model to drive this spreadsheet. And we're filling in certain columns with everybody else's data, and he's even got more stuff in there. So it was, he was like,
That's great.
boom, right on. I was very impressed. So it's easily to work with, so if we want to get into a discussion, sometimes there's that joke about how sometimes board members or committee members want to ask you to make the rows the columns and the columns the rows. But we can do that.
You're good.
Chuckling down here about that. Well, but you do, and that's what's so good about building this database. So we've been doing a lot of education about what kind of a database do we have to build, and how does that work? We're just using Excel a lot.
Well, this that you just flipped to by building was very close to what I was thinking about and asking about. So you can look at, say, Alpine or whichever, and we're going to spend money on that building, but from this fund at this point in time,
Right.
from another fund at this point in time, and we can see all that together relative to that structure.
Yeah, it's really good. And then as we look with the data, you'll see things like this right here. We've got 3 centennials.
Yeah.
It's because you've got 3 different databases and it's, the name's different. So
It says high school.
that's what we've got to work with in terms of pulling it in from these separate systems, pulling it all into one. And then I go, well, there aren't 3 centennials, you know? So then you have to clean up the data.
Sure.
And I just haven't had time to do that. What's that?
Well, like broadly, there's 3 and they're kind of.
Yeah,
right.
But
So-
yeah, that, you can understand how it got to that, so.
yeah, then we'll find out who doesn't know how to spell broadly.
And computers aren't smart enough to figure that out.
There's a G in broadly, I think, if I'm not
Those
mistaken.
are different databases.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
could be corrected and made consistent and then it would compress together.
Oh, yeah, I do a lot of that. Even with the monthly financials, there's a budgetary part.
Database is what I'm saying. If it was corrected in the database, it would.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we'd have to go back to all 3 of them. Yeah, that's the interesting part. But,
Internship, Jeff.
so far so good. We're getting closer and closer.
And we,
Um,
the last meeting, we also had a way of looking at it in its entirety. So yes, we have these budgets of what we're doing, but it doesn't show the whole picture of what's the entirety of what's needed. And that was the document that showed the $400,000 or $500,000 of complete, just deferred maintenance essentially, right? If I'm correct, Mr. Oldham, I forget.
Yeah,
how
we talked about this,
Mm,
where we had funded and unfunded projects.
Correct, yes.
Let's go down here to, yeah. So we've got unfunded numbers in here. And this has not been updated to reflect, for instance, again, Dewan went through, and this 92 million, he's spread out over the years for us now. So it'll end up net the same, but it'll put it in different fiscal years, so. But I've not gone back, I want to make sure I get this other one as best we can get it. The key though is how do we maintain it, number one.
Yeah.
Make it, I don't want to add work to folks. We want to get it set up right so we export the data into a usable format. And then number 2, understand how do we want to look at it. You just mentioned you like to see it by operational unit. So maybe we have a report that shows everything by operational unit. How do you want the funding to show up? Do you care by fiscal year? Things like that.
I think
What are some of the layouts we like? We set those up as standard layouts, and then we can begin to give periodic updates that way.
So it's sort of like looking at it this and then looking at it in another dimension, whether it's by the building.
Yeah.
But having this though is also very helpful because it sort of drives what you can and what you cannot do and reminds people.
So, that's where we are on this. I was,
It's been a lot of work.
probably,
A lot of work.
I think I wanted to be right here, yeah. Probably most impressive about this is, a lot of this was done this morning in about 3 hours. Because we've been a little busy with some other things.
And not that like, you know, as we get to a point, I think it should be trying to be kept in mind, like, what is the purpose of this? It's also not only to inform us and to drive what we do, but to keep the public sort of appraised. How could it be, you know, posted like our digital dashboard for other things? So, you know, how we can dig into that data, how could this eventually at some point maybe get to that point where it's more consumable? But with, you know, people making assumptions about certain things that aren't true, you know, something makes sense and I don't know, would just be a hope. This is fantastic. Do we have any questions about this? Would you like to see it any other way or general questions about this? No?
I was just curious why it says copy, so this isn't your original file, or you did it so you could mess with it and not worry about it?
Actually, I couldn't get it to open from the web,
Okay,
so I had to make a copy of it and download it on the desktop.
I'm
And
fine,
when we're
I
done,
just
I'm gonna
was
throw this
curious.
one away. Yeah. Now, there is an old saying about he who laughs last usually has a backup, so I do go online and make backups of the files, just in case things go bump in the night, so, but
He said general questions, so
That's fine.
it's pretty general, but.
So I was curious, if we wanted to
Great
look
question.
at this, say by contractor. We've got a particular contractor that's doing 7 or 8 or 15 projects in the district. Could we look and see by contractor where they were working and how much? Or is there some other system that gives us that data anyway, that we don't need it as part of this?
The data I have would not tell me that right now, but we'll have to make note.
I'm not telling you that I think it's a great thing to look at and please
Right.
build it in. I'm not doing
No,
that at all.
no,
I'm
no,
just-
but I think probably more so on a current year basis than on a future year basis. We likely know, clearly we can go into the current accounting database and tell you what we've let, what's out there in purchase orders, what's been expended and whatnot. To have any data on, who we might think the contractor is in 2022, that's probably not
Sure,
going to
right.
exist. But on an annual basis, that's another look. And we can look at current year data for that.
Yeah, okay.
And get a pretty, and you can go back and get a history, you
Yeah.
can see, all right, so since 15, 16, 17, and 18, who have been the major contractors that we've worked with, and at what schools, and what funds that we can, that's probably easier to do than this, because it's already in the accounting system.
Yeah,
It's
got
a
it.
financial dashboard.
Yeah, you go.
Yeah.
Transparency
It's the
website.
transparency website, you could drill down into the vendors.
Yeah, makes sense.
Whole nother thing.
That's why questions off the top of my head are not necessarily turn out to be.
No, it's good. I don't, Mike always thinks about the financial transparency website. For some reason, I'm not, probably because he manages it. But it's not unusual that a lot of the questions are already out there. You just have to dig down into them. Or the answers are out there for your questions. Okay? So that was what I wanted to do interactively for you today.
This is fantastic, thank you.
Okay?
So if you want to, why don't we do item 8, budget timeline, since we're talking about budgets right now.
Okay.
Let's move on to that thing with mine.
All right, so that is a document that looks like this in your packet. Jody? Oh, you've got it. Jody has it. And in your packet, it's a couple of things, and Scott should probably talk about it. At a very high level, we're not sure timeline, what you, in a certain amount. When I think timeline, I think of something like this, color coded, when's the process start? So for instance, personnel budget kind of starts in September, we're thinking, maybe the FAC reviews it in December, and et cetera. You can look at
I like the way
everything.
you did this, okay.
You can do it that way. And then Scott can talk about, this is almost day by day.
Yeah, the other one is what you've seen before, where it gets into by month, by day, and it has much more detailed information that all feeds into this. But we were talking through this earlier today, just trying to keep the high-level topics up there and trying to see if this met what you were looking for and met the time frame that you were looking for, and to see if there's anything that maybe we were missing.
I'm supposed to be somewhere. It's okay.
It was up there.
No, I think this is what we were sort of looking at. I mean, we have a lot of different things that we're sort of juggling at the same time, that we're trying to examine, and this makes perfect sense. I guess real quick, how does, with the 5-year forecast that we do in September, would have personnel budgets in there, sort of assumptions for the following year, correct? So how have we sort of balanced that with our budgeting with the non-personnel already? So since we're always doing one in October and then we get to our non-personnel budget traditionally in the new year, in the winter, wouldn't that 5-year forecast reflect what we are getting ready to do in the budget, the non-personnel end?
See if this answers your question. like right now, this coming July and August, when I start to look at the October forecast, all the expenditure data I get is really based upon the work we just completed.
Current year, yeah, so it just stays.
So it's just what we put in the May forecast.
That's right, yeah.
Because everything's done.
Yeah.
What I do for October is primarily look at revenue. Things like state revenue, plug in the actual results from the current fiscal year, if they haven't already been factored into the May. So it's really more of a
reflection of the current
revenue
year.
update. And that's what happens in October.
Okay.
Even though October is the first one we do, and the May is called an update. But what happens is what really kicks in this chart, starting in November, well, actually, about the time I'm doing the October one, we're beginning to talk about staffing, not for the current fiscal year, which at that point in time would be the fiscal 19. That personnel review is for 20, fiscal year 20. So that gets done in time for that 211 process that begins in the first part of the year. And then you get into the non-personnel budgets of the typical cycle. And then by the time we get to the May update, that's really where we're updating. Well, again, revenue certainly, but it's more of an expenditure update because now we're saying, okay, now we know what 2020 is going to look like from an expenditure side. So that's how it works. The fall is kind of revenue driven, the spring is more expenditure driven. And the fall looks at the out years, because by the time you're into 19, it's in the books, so to speak. So that's how that works. We actually had that conversation this morning. So this laying it out like that triggers that kind of question. What do you know and when do you know it, and how does that feed into the plan?
So I guess, and this is great, I really like that we're starting to really get the entirety of it sort of laid out. I guess then, thank you very much for this and, continue to make this process better. In the future then I guess that it's, what does the personnel budget look like? And, before, again, it's like anything else, what's too much, what's too little, what's helpful, what's not helpful, what are some things that can be confusing that as we look at this and digest it makes sense. So, I look forward, in July, August, and September, starting as you're going through the process internally, starting to develop that process with that December goal of having something to at least start with that we can start going through the personnel budget, doing all these separately. Jody, yeah.
What is an Article 211
Oh, yeah.
job fair? I assume it's some kind of staff position, but
So 211 is the contract number, the actual part of the contract. It's item 211, I guess. And it's how they staff for the next year. It's the contract how the union
it'd be helpful
staffs
if we
us.
said what that actually was and not a number, in my eyes.
Where is that at? Where did you see that at?
Well, it's just
It's
used
timeline.
repeatedly.
Yeah.
It's fine, I know
That kind of
everybody
approach
else
to
knows what it
everything
is,
is-
but.
Yes.
Yeah, in education, whether it's acronyms
Jargon
or other
and
things, yeah.
Maybe a footnote.
Yeah,
That'd be great, thank you.
very helpful.
Thank you for that. We do
We're
that
hiring
quite often.
211 people.
No, we do that often, where we use.
Not the first time it's
jargon.
come up,
Yeah.
Yeah, we try to take out the acronyms, but that's what we have.
Especially if we're gonna be including, folks from the unions and the
Sure.
associations, they probably know too,
And that
but.
particular item, I think they do know.
I'm
but
sure.
There's plenty of others
Yeah.
that would be foreign.
And it's a process where certificated staff go through posting on open positions in other buildings and movements and transfers, and it's just, it's a lot.
And the point that you're making, with us posting the materials for the committee on our webpage and the public going to the webpage and reviewing that information, they're not gonna know.
What that is, yeah.
So thank you.
I've been here 4 years and I still have questions,
Yeah.
so.
Do we have any other questions on some of the proposed budget timelines? Any suggestions to make it better, anything like that? Okay. All right, well, thank you again. This is really exciting stuff. I guess let's just move back to item 6, and I'll briefly go through that. There has been a suggestion that we increase some funds for board development. And that is not part of administrative recommendation. Do not feel like it's sort of the committee's role to have that discussion on this sort of particular issue. And so instead of, adding that to the appropriations resolution, this will be something that the board will have to have a conversation about at the board table. Since it is board driven, it is not, this committee is to hear things recommended, from the administration, from the superintendent's team, not from board, a majority of the board, one board member. This is a board conversation for all 7, and it's to protect the process as well, and that's why it's better to have this conversation always at the board table. So that'll be happening coming up soon, I'm very sure. So I just kind of wanted to brief you, because it does in fact go with the appropriations resolution, but we recommended the administrative changes only are reflected in that, not this for board services. So we'll have that discussion later, so I just wanted to keep you guys updated on that. Okay? And that's that, and I guess the last thing is, we had been discussing adding some ex officio members, to this committee. And I think it's important that we do, building relationships, keeping everyone appraised of what's going on with the school's finances. It's good to have sort of everyone at the table. Quite frankly, I understand, to keep them at the level of ex officio kind of protects their best interest as they are organizations, so I'd like to have them here for comment, not to vote for or against, budgets, but to give input, to learn, and to use this as a way to talk about what's going on within their own membership associations.
Sorry.
So you'll see here a few documents. It looks like one has some red language on that with some stuff that looks like it's deleted and added, and you can kind of see how that's set up on just 2 pages of that. And you'll see on membership expanding it from 7 to 11, reflecting those 4, and then item 3 under Article 4 would explain which ones are added: CEA, OTC, CSC, SEA, and CAA, both acronyms. All acronyms. Maybe we should break this out into non-acronyms and have these, because I don't even know the names of the last 2. So if we can maybe get that changed so we can recommend this change to the board.
And you first got the bylaws as they were adopted, and then these are the 2 pages that I found that I think pertain to membership in terms of service. I made a stab, and it was clearly that, a stab at what I think needs to be adjusted. The person in charge of writing policy and bylaws happens to be on vacation, so.
Well, let's do this then.
The authorship is all mine. One of the things that I'm assuming it should be added in here, that these are, and I forgot to do it, these are non-voting members, so I need to somehow get the word ex officio, non-voting ex officio members, because ex officio doesn't mean non-voting by definition, it just means you're there by virtue of your office, so.
So they're both non-voting and ex officio.
So let's get to
They are.
the spirit of this is, since we need to make sure that we get the language, and it's fine. The spirit of this is to have those 4 associations and groups on here as ex officio. It will need changing of the charter, which does need to go to the board to be approved. So, maybe what we can do then, and that's basically what it is we're adding for. So we need to, that's what we need to do. If that's okay with the committee, maybe we can have, when Mr. Roush, we can have a draft of this, then resent again to the committee members, the finance committee members, just sort of an update. And that way it can just sort of flow from there to the board for approval. Because again, I'd like to have this, in place by, our August meeting, to have this kind of going into the new year. And that way we can keep the process going, but keep all of our members up to date on exactly what the language is. And being someone from the legislature, it is important to make sure you get the technical language right. But it was a good time.
Can I get some guidance on term of service what are you thinking in terms of services? Board members are appointed annually.
Mhm.
Our community members are on a 2-year term, appointed, you know.
I mean, as
By the
ex
board
officio,
president.
Because it's ex officio, that it probably annual.
maybe they were able to pick it amongst themselves annually, and we just have a slot for them.
So we're not gonna,
We're not imposing sort of like,
who it is.
yeah, let them decide who it is and let them decide it.
Sure, yeah, so it doesn't need to be done
Yeah.
at all, it's just
Just a slot.
continuous ex officio slot.
Okay, all right, so it could be Joe ad infinitum if the association
Because they have other
would.
things they participate
Okay,
in that they
all
select
right.
through their leadership.
So,
And that would not pigeonhole us into anything.
Do we already give these associations notice of these meetings?
I do not know.
only through the public notice on the website.
Ah,
They are
okay.
not on my mailing list.
That's my question, if they're non-voting and these are open to the public, what does it achieve by,
It allows them to have dialogue with us about it, to have conversation. You know, a lot of these folks are drivers of the budget, and I think it's important that they participate in some sort of fashion, whether or not it's voting to make recommendations, but I'd like to have them here. So when they have questions about things or comments or anything,
Okay.
that they have a platform.
so they would be included in the roll call and either present or absent, so it's.
Yeah,
And they'd be, I guess, made comfortable and welcome to participate
yeah.
and add their thoughts or ask questions, which is what I'm doing informally on policy review
I just feel like we're already doing.
with those folks
Mhm.
already.
Since this is open.
I mean, it's open.
Those would all be in,
but
this is
when-
more of a formalization of a process that's already been. in
Well, I mean,
place.
they get to have a discussion with us, unlike, you know, technically in a committee process under Robert's Rules of Order, you know, the people that are sitting in the audience can observe and watch, but it's the people that are sitting at the table who are able to participate and ask questions. That's what I want.
Okay,
I want the associations there so they can talk to us and have conversation more fluid. They know what the process is. You know, to have them at the table, you know, in my opinion, I think it's valuable. But that is the big difference, you know, than someone sitting back there or just watching.
okay, thank you,
Mhm.
that helps.
So what do we think? So another thing actually is then the calendar. So I know Stan, you had sent something out about maybe future
Oh,
board meetings.
Right, it's a poll, and
So I know some of
the
the.
last time I looked, Friday for some reason is not popular.
Agreed,
I think that was the only one I said no to.
me too.
Yeah, so
Monday, Wednesday.
I think Monday and Wednesday are probably the alternatives, if Thursday doesn't work for them. I did not poll them,
Okay.
because I didn't know exactly who to poll, but that's a beer, isn't it? Hewlett? No, never mind. Hewlett, isn't it? Hewlett?
We're on tape.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know. So, I think you had indicated at least one of the associations didn't,
Yes, and I want to be as
Like
accommodating as
Thursday.
possible. Yeah.
um,
See, yeah.
so, but it is that they're choosing who they send.
Does Monday work for folks?
I guess Jody and I are the only two that.
Mr. Jordan Miller, too.
Did you look it up?
I'm seeing it, I'm looking at it now.
Oh.
Oh, good,
So the
thank
board
you.
meetings are Tuesdays?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think I said Monday or Wednesday, but I do have some Wednesday conflicts, so I guess Monday.
The only thing I thought about Mondays
Holidays.
was, well, your holidays is one, but the reason why we're on Thursday in between the two board meetings is it gives us time to prepare the financial reports.
Mhm.
Because that first Tuesday can occur pretty quickly. And so I've got, just barely a week to get that turned around. You move this meeting up to that Monday in between the two board meetings. That's gonna get tight. Wednesday, okay, one day is one thing.
Mhm.
3 days is something else. I'm just offering that up from
Mhm.
a procedural standpoint.
What do you guys think? So, would Wednesdays work? No.
Sorry.
So 10
Oh,
days
that's right.
before the board meeting is kind of what,
What about first Mondays of the month?
You'll be a month behind seeing financials.
last Monday.
The board will be a month behind seeing financials.
What about the third Monday? Before, so just
That's the original problem that got us to this conversation.
Yeah.
Now, if you could do,
Change the
Would
board.
second Monday or
you
second
could
Monday
do,
wouldn't work?
you could do the fourth, you could do the, if you do
Yeah,
the,
sounds like.
What,
it
second?
doesn't make any difference, fourth, any Monday other than right in between those two Tuesdays, you miss that second board meeting.
That's what I'm saying, what about if we did it on the second Monday of the month?
And that's what got us the problem in the first place, the timing. It closes that window down.
Doesn't it give you more time to adjust? If you're on the second Thursday, we have a board meeting on the third Tuesday. So right now, we're preparing a monthly financial for the 19th. Correct?
5 days away.
5 days, so wouldn't moving it to the 11th give you more time to prepare for those second board meetings? Not, I just don't know, I'm just confused.
I'm more preparing for the finance committee than I am the second board meeting.
Okay.
Once I make finance, I'm done, I'm ready for the board meeting. So what you're doing is you've got your two Tuesdays here, and I'm sitting here Thursday. You move it back to Monday, and I'm getting awful close to that first Tuesday, which is awful close to the first of the month, generally speaking. But we can, why don't we take a calendar and map it out, and we'll see where we run into problems.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll map it out.
And maybe we could vary it, you know, sometimes it's,
You have to be like adept.
well, maybe, here's the thing, maybe we should poll the people that are coming and maybe Thursday could work for them. Because it sounds like Wednesday's bad for Mike and some Wednesdays are bad for me. So, I don't know.
Okay.
We need, yeah, that's what I'd say, is poll.
Well, if that one Monday
Mondays are
ends
bad
up
for
being,
you.
really early in the month, it's really a burden on Mike.
Let's just,
He's gotta get the books closed.
I think we have enough right now to maybe continue to look at it.
Let me map out the Mondays, and then,
It's hard to satisfy.
should I go ahead and get in touch with the associations and see
Please.
who they might want to send and poll them on a
Invite
day
them.
of week?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, maybe they
And
didn't
maybe
vote
explain
for
some of
on
the
Thursday
concerns we're having
versus,
with, you know,
6 on Thursday.
why Thursday works as well.
Okay.
Would be helpful to explain that as well, just so everyone's on the same page. I just appreciate everyone's flexibility. And sorry I'm going through great lengths to do this, but I think it's important long-term for not only the committee, the community, but, you know, as we go through, you know, different processes as a board and the community, it's good to have our associations sort of at the table with us as we're going through that.
Okay, got it.
Perfect. I think we got through everything, and almost at 5:32, which is pretty good, amazing. Thank you. All right, guys. So I don't have anything else for us today. So I just want to thank you again, everyone, for making time, coming in. Do we have any other sort of questions, comments, any sort of things they want to bring up before we go to the committee?
So we don't know our next meeting, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's
We're looking-
scheduled for August, but it may
Sure.
change as we get into this.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
It depends upon how quickly, one of the next two, well, it's not gonna be the 19th. We'd have to have the
we'll hold it.
bylaws.
Yeah.
But you can always invite them to the meeting anyway.
Sure,
As Jody said, it's a
absolutely.
public meeting, we can invite
let's
them.
already
and-
start.
And fix the bylaws in August, and they officially become.
Put them on the distribution for,
Yeah.
and need to call and invite them and.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do
Do we have any other, so what other board meetings do we have in June?
We have the 19th, well, other than your specials.
So if we have the 29th, I'd like to have this charter language at the latest finished by then, before the end of the year, to get the charter changed, not in August. No. At least the membership change needs to be done before the end of the year. And then we'll work on the calendar at the same time. That's important, I think. Okay. So what then we'll do then is we'll keep on working on the language, we'll circulate it. Once Mr. Roush gets back here from his vacation, we'll get that finalized, we'll get that circulated, and we'll allow people to give comment. And then we'll move forward with the understanding that the board will adopt a change in the charter, at latest, the last board meeting in June. Okay, I think we'll do. Excellent. All right, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, same sign, no? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, appreciate it.